is Keys to the Shop, episode 314, 6 Essential Qualities of Coffee Shop Leaders. Well, hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show. I'm really thrilled to have you join me today. If you're just joining us at Keys to the Shop, and this is your first exposure to the world of KTTS, it's not really the greatest acronym. It doesn't really roll off the tongue, but Keys to the Shop does. Welcome, and you can go to keystotheshop.com, and there you'll find a large catalog of all the past episodes, minus the shift break episodes. I know I keep saying I need to upload those to the website, and I will, I promise, but we have like 530 episodes or so, and on the website, you can search for topics that interest you. And so instead of going from beginning to end, which I know there's like 2 people on this earth that have done that, and they're not me, but kudos to them. And also, that's kind of weird and awesome. But you don't have to do that. You can just go right to keystotheshop.com and go searching for the topic that you want to listen to, and it'll be right there. So you can find that at keystotheshop.com. And if you're not a new listener and you love the show and you've been a listener for a while, I would encourage you, just if you haven't subscribed, to subscribe to the show, and also share these episodes with friends, and also let people know that Keys to the Shop is a thing, that it's a podcast that they can listen to help them with their careers, their businesses, and anything related to thriving in coffee shop retail. I really appreciate that, everyone. I know so many of you already do that. Now, Keys to the Shop, on top of doing the podcast, does offer consulting and coaching for you and your business. So that means I get to work directly with you to help you work through anything going on in your coffee business, or just to help you set up a good coffee business from the ground up. If you're new to the world of coffee shops and you're just starting your business and you need guidance, or if you have an existing business where you want to go from good to great, you want to really make everything that much more excellent in your operations, your people, your management, quality, there are a lot of ways that Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. So if you're interested in a free discovery call with me, you can just email chris@keystotheshop.com, and let's set that up and see what's going on, and if Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. So again, that email for Keys to the Shop Consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's episode is brought to you by the wonderful people over at Prima Coffee, which is one of the world's best specialty coffee equipment suppliers, curating an amazing list of not just smallwares, but commercial coffee equipment to help equip you with the best. And they make sure that you're getting the right equipment for your situation, for whatever your needs are in the coffee business. They will work with you to make sure you're getting the right gear. And it's such an important purchase that you want people that are dedicated to your success in your corner. Of course, that's Prima Coffee. Go to primacoffee.com/keys and use the promo code KEYS5 at checkout, and you'll get 5% off your entire order. It's a really amazing offer, so definitely take advantage of that. If you're in the market for commercial coffee equipment for your new shop, or you're upgrading your equipment in your existing stores, I definitely recommend working with prima-coffee.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by the Barista Series. This is the line of plant-based performance beverages that basically ensure that no matter what you choose from their extensive lineup, hemp, oat, almond, whatever, they have designed these with a community in mind for the professional barista, with the feedback of some of the world's best baristas, so that when they release these to the public, to you and I, so we can use them on the bar, they're going to stand up to the heat from steaming, produce awesome texture for latte art, keep the flavor balance focused on the coffee, and generally delight your customers. So go to pacificfoodservice.com to learn more. I would encourage you to try these, try them with your staff, try it in all the contexts where it's appropriate, with iced and hot. I think you really will be impressed by their consistency, quality. If you want to serve your customers the best plant-based beverages, then you need to be serving them the Barista Series from Pacific. Okay, everybody. Well, today I wanted to talk to you about character traits, about qualities in leadership in the coffee shop. Now, I know there are a lot of lists of, qualities of leadership that are out there, but what I wanted to do here is slightly different in that Each of these character traits or qualities of leadership in the coffee shop are arranged in order of how you would need to exhibit them to be a good leader in a coffee shop. Now, what inspires this conversation today is conversations that I've had with clients of Keys to the Shop Consulting. There are a lot of people who are either just starting out in leading a coffee shop. They are not in the coffee industry, but they're about to become way into the coffee industry by opening a coffee bar. Or they are, veterans of the coffee industry, but they're about to step into a new era of leadership. And in both cases, there are trepidations. There's nervousness about, am I going to be able to do this? Because, frankly, your baristas and the people that you lead are going to exhibit qualities that you don't have. And the natural instinct is to say, well, how can I lead people if I don't have exactly what they have? So if my baristas are better at being a barista than I am, how can I be a leader of baristas unless I am the best barista? Or if I am personally not so detail-oriented in my life, but I hire people to be detail-oriented, how can I become a leader of these people if I am not exhibiting those qualities myself? Now, a lot of you might have already jumped to where I'm going with this, which is this is not necessary. And I'll get to that in a second. But we do think it's necessary because we have this linear way of thinking about leadership that means we have to be superior or equal to an individual, rather than looking at the unique traits that we have to contribute to allow somebody else's unique traits to be on display. So where somebody is weak, another person can be strong, and that's okay. How can we allow for the strengths of those that are on our teams, these unique strengths, to shine, and for us to be able to give platform to that rather than look at it as a source of insecurity for ourselves? Because when we have this inward focus about what we are not, we can't really focus on what other people are. And it's hard to lead people when we're only looking at ourselves. So I wanted to talk about that at the outset here, that you don't need to exhibit the exact qualities or strengths of the people that you lead. Part of leadership is celebrating those strengths that maybe you don't have. Now, while that's true, I think there are character traits that can be developed or are necessary in order to make leadership effective in the coffee shop. So if you're thinking, maybe I'm not as good at the things that I want other people to be good at, that's okay. It's perfectly fine that you're not, let's say, as process-oriented as somebody who you hire to be process-oriented. If you, for instance, are an owner and you hire somebody to be an operations manager and you want them to be really, really good at spreadsheets, okay, that does not mean that you need to be great at spreadsheets. It does, however, mean that you need to have certain skills or develop certain skills that will help lead that individual. So let's get right into it. Let's get into the 6 character traits or qualities that are, I think, really integral to being a good leader in the coffee shop. And remember, these are in order of how they develop and they mature in your practice of leadership. So first, mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness has everything to do with making sure that you are not only aware of your trajectory, but also aware of your wake. So the wake is that disturbance of water that trails behind a boat going through the water, right? You're on a course, you're on a setting, you have to be aware of that. But when you're on a lake or a body of water with other people, you have to be aware of how much disturbance the boat causes. So if there's somebody really close to you and you know that the wake of your boat is going to cause a lot of waves, you have to be a little considerate of that. So it's forward-focused, and you're also looking at the results of what your actions cause. So it's really a holistic view of driving this ship, this coffee shop. So the decisions that you make and the way that you conduct yourself is done with a goal in mind, but also with respect to how it's going to set with other people, with customers, with staff, even with yourself. And when you ignore one of the things, one of those areas, the goals that drive your actions or the impact of your actions, and even just knowledge of the dimensions of this vehicle and what it's capable of, then there's disaster. Then we start just steamrolling people in the coffee shop. We don't have any concept of how our actions impact other people. We're only focused on the goal. And for some reason, we're not attaining the goal because we are not really aware of how we are impacting other people. So we say, we want you to upsell at the register. We say, you got to sell more muffins, sell more of these drinks or that menu item. But the way to get there is not by just focusing on one aspect, but all of them, by being mindful that, yes, you do want people to upsell, but have you trained them to do so? Have you resourced them? Are you sure that the way that you're describing this action that you want them to take is being understood properly? Have you thought about how you present as a leader and whether or not you are an intimidating presence? That's a huge problem for a lot of people. No matter if you don't consider yourself intimidating, there are people, I think, just by their size or demeanor might just classically be intimidating. But there's lots of ways to be intimidating. You can just be stressed out, and you could be the most petite and non-threatening presence in the world. But if you're stressed out and you're sharp and aggressive, then you're going to be intimidating. So being mindful is taking into consideration that all of your actions have huge implications in the business because you are an authority, because you're a leader. It's under scrutiny. It's magnified. It has a ripple effect, more so than other people in the business. So again, you're aware of where you're going, but you're also aware of the wake in your impact and the things that contribute to that impact also. Your attitude and how you present is one of those ways, and there's a lot of other ways also. So first, if to be a good leader, I think you need to be pretty mindful. Now, number 2 here would be empathy, being empathetic. And empathy is a very specific kind of mindfulness. You are putting yourself into the position of other people. This could be either theoretically or it can be literal. And I think being literal would be a very good thing to do. You can't always do that, but you can practice the exercise mentally of trying to figure out what is it like, and I always say this, to live within the systems that you create, that I create. So if I say I'm going to have everybody do things this way, I'm going to have everybody close the shop this way. Well, empathy would be either, if you're working on the bar, doing it yourself to see how it is, or if you're not working the bar, getting a lot of feedback from other people about whether or not what you're about to propose would make sense, and also watching what people do in order to really have knowledge of what is and what will be. How will this be taken? When you implement a new way of making drinks, a new way of closing the bar, making sandwiches, all that. Being empathetic is an outward-focused practice of saying, I want to make sure that I'm not just creating things without feeling, or at least without predicting and feeling the impact of it myself as I write it, because that feeling will help guide your writing and the implementation, and therefore the effectiveness of what you put out there. Because at some point you're going to be writing and be like, I can't do this. Nobody can do this. This is inhuman. I can't make people do all this stuff. I want them to, but it's just not practical. Somebody who's empathetic will get to that point where they have to stop themselves. Somebody who's not empathetic will say, okay, well, they're just going to have to suck it up because I want it and I'm the boss. And so there. So empathy is one of those traits born from mindfulness that's more of an applied mindfulness. It's about identifying with other people and allowing that practice of identifying with them to guide how you communicate, what you say, what you do, and how you lead. And ultimately, people will understand based on your actions over time whether or not you're empathetic. They won't necessarily understand that you're empathetic simply because you say so. If you just say, hey guys, I really want to understand where you're coming from. I really want to know, I just want to be a good boss and, just kind of talk about this a lot. Your actions need to back that up. We talk about values, action gap, and how people will interpret your values really only based on your actions over time, because anybody can talk. Being a podcaster, that's hugely apparent. The challenge is to have a long-term view of these things. So empathy is not just something that you cultivate in word, but it's something that you practice in deed. And then it becomes a reality. It becomes a part of your identity because you've changed how you operate over time. And it becomes a part of how they identify you because, again, there's this history of action behind it. So mindfulness, then empathy. And next in order here is patience. So in order to be a good leader in the coffee shop, you need to have patience. Now, of course, this is a given. I think every list of leadership traits will probably at some point talk about patience. Not that they wouldn't talk about any of these things, but I want to contextualize it in a coffee shop and go back to what we were first talking about in our conversation, which is you might be a new leader. You may have actually just been a leader in some capacity in your past. You could have, been a shift leader at Target, or you were actually leading a shop floor in a warehouse or a production facility. You might have been a lecturer or a professor or something like that. You have some kind of leadership. However, I like to say this sometimes, being a owner or leading a group of people in a coffee shop is kind of like being a camp counselor. Not to infantilize the workforce of coffee shops, but there is a lot of emotional load that comes with this. And there is a lot of hand-holding. There is a lot of leadership that's needed that you might not have thought would be needed. And most owners that end up in coffee shop leadership have not really experienced what it's like to lead a group of 20-somethings in a stressful environment. And so patience is particularly important because you may have gone through the exercise of becoming mindful and empathetic, but then people happen. Then it gets hard. And we realize that there's some atmospheric drag. Something is, this is why things burn up upon entering the atmosphere of Earth, because of all of the friction of the atmosphere on that object. So imagine that your communication and the standards and all that stuff is entering this atmosphere of the staff culture. There's some atmospheric drag, and that friction will start to heat things up, might heat you up, And the trick here is patience. Patience as a preemptive positioning of your mind, knowing that you are going to be tested. Your patience is going to be tested because people are not going to just jump when you say jump. They're not going to immediately, quote unquote, get it. I hear this all the time when I'm reading certain posts on, coffee forums where people are like, well, I hired a new person and they still don't get it after 2 weeks. And maybe I should fire them. What do y'all think? And I'm like, 2 weeks? I mean, and for a lot of people, the training ends up being like, well, they were on bar with me for 5 shifts or 6 shifts, and I just need people that just, get it right now. Unrealistic expectations, first of all. Second of all, having a lot of impatience with other people is kind of an indictment against us, because it shows that we don't even realize how much patience others have to have for us. And we often want people to be able to just get it, quote unquote, really quickly, because we know that we are kind of insecure with our own knowledge, and we need people to sort of fill in for us, pull up the slack of our insecurity, be, this superhuman because we feel very much the opposite. So if we're honest about that, then we can start to say, okay, we all need patience. People, be patient with me because I'm a new owner of a coffee shop, or I'm an owner who's trying to get a new way of doing business and doing life at this coffee bar going. We're trying to do 2.0 of our coffee shop, and it's going to take some time. And I need some patience with myself, and I realize that you all are going to have to change the way you behave, or it's going to take some time to get it. It's going to take me some time to get it also. So patience is hugely important because you're managing not only other people, but you're also managing yourself and trying to exhibit the kind of qualities that you want other people to exhibit also. Now, of course, patience can only go so far. It's not like you can't put your foot down when there's bad behavior. Sometimes people really don't get it, and it's become obvious to you that you've done all you can to help them. We always talk about looking at yourself first and then the system in an honest way, not in an assumptive way, because it's easy to just say, well, it's not me, it's not the system, it's got to be them, right? What did that take? Like 5 seconds of thought? I'm talking about like really examining, like taking a day or two to really mull this over. And you'll need to make a decision that it might be hard, but patience as a disposition in leadership will give everyone, including yourself, the best chance of success before those conversations even need to be had. Now, the next character trait, the next quality of leadership in the coffee shop, remember, this is in order, is consistency. I can't tell you the number of times where I've gone to a client's place over the years and talked with staff. And one of the things that I'll do is just kind of talk with them about what they think about the business and working there. And in these assessments, we try to get as detailed and thorough a look at the entire business as possible. One of the themes that comes up all the time is inconsistency. Usually that's related to communication, but it can be related to almost anything. Inconsistency creates confusion, creates demoralization, and it is sort of a habit leadership gets in when they're inundated with too many inputs and don't have faith in themselves. And when I mean faith in themselves, I mean follow through, where you say something and you're going to do it. Instead of that, we do the opposite, which is we use our words as bookmarks for things that we want, but we don't ever really have an intention of following through with, or we do have an intention, but we don't have a plan. So we talk about things, and the talking actually makes us think that we've done something when in fact we've not done anything. We do this with promising fixes on the bar, raises for staff, and everything in between. What we say really needs to be backed up with what we do, and it needs to be consistent. So I would rather see somebody just say less so that they can do it, rather than promising the world and only giving them Delaware. I would rather see people just accomplish less, but better. We've talked about this a little bit, maybe as an aside. I think our industry is like a maximalist industry in a sense. Like minimalist decor, maximal promises, minimal delivery. So it's like this sandwich, like hardly anything in the cafe, decor-wise, promising the world in our marketing, not getting very much in return. That includes the customer experience, that includes the barista experience. And so if we're talking about consistency, we need to be talking about, again, how these other character traits build into that, mainly empathy and mindfulness. So if you're going to implement one-on-ones across 3 stores, it's not enough to just say, hey, everyone, we're going to start this next week. You have to actually plan out what the practicalities of it are, schedule it, make sure it's happening, and dedicate yourself to practicing leading that part of your business forever. It doesn't just go away. It doesn't just take care of itself eventually. It always needs to be curated. And this is how people kill plants in their house. They buy it and somehow expect that it's just going to live forever. And even air plants need some care. I'm getting better at caring for plants because I realize they do actually take water and sunlight and attention. And sometimes I sing to them. I'm kidding. I don't do that. But I might start that. The point is that you can't just purchase something that you expect to grow and not invest into it. That's why I say it's a forever thing. But we act as though we can just throw things into this bin of our coffee shops and then it will take care of itself. That's where a lot of our inconsistency comes from because we've bitten off more than we can chew. So if you do less and are consistent with it, it's way better than trying to do more and just letting the balls drop all over the place. People don't have very much confidence in leadership that is just scattered, eccentric, which is just kind of a warmed over way of saying, we have no confidence in this person. They're a loose cannon. So I think if you want to be a good leader, you need to be consistent, which means you need to actually count the cost of what it is you're promising, what you're communicating, and follow through with it across the board in all the shops, in all the communication channels. And that's your responsibility. That is your craft. That's the same. It has the same importance as consistent quality with espresso. You train people to make sure that they're dialing in all the time and that they're factoring in things like roast date and, if the burrs are heating up, adjusting the grind mid-shift. This is part of the barista craft. In leadership, it's the same thing. You have to look at the elements that will impact the consistency of leadership and communication, culture, and then dial in all the time. That is a craft of leadership, and consistency is one of the cornerstones of that. Now, this leads us to number 5, and that is confidence. Confidence is number 5 because you just don't start with confidence. If you are starting your coffee shop and you've not been in coffee before, I don't care what you've done in your past in leadership, you should not have a blowhard kind of confidence that says, I'm really good, we're really good. There's a bluster to some people starting a coffee shop, or even just people that are taking on new projects within a shop who haven't really taken the time to get to know what they have before they start taking on more. And that's really scary. That shuts down communication. They're not open to feedback. There's a lot of pride there. That's not the kind of confidence that I'm talking about. That's cockiness. It's arrogance in a bad sense. Arrogance is the bad kind of arrogance is one that's not even really backed up by historical precedent. Like you haven't even practiced for this and you think you're going to be great at it. Confidence is cultivated through competence, and competence is born through experience, and taking advantage of your experiences to become competent, then confident, has everything to do with approaching it mindfully. So again, these are in order. So when you're confident, though, you can stand by your decisions because you have a history to look back on in the business. And everybody kind of knows that this is your MO. And having confidence is important because part of being a leader is being an agent of resourcing and clarity. You need to be able to tell people what to do, how to do it. You can't just be wishy-washy. You can't just throw it back into their court and call that empowerment. You have to make decisions and be decisive, and you can't do that unless you have some confidence that's been cultivated over time. This is one of those things that you're going to have to be patient with yourself on. You're not going to be making as great of decisions in the first year as you will in the second year. People know that. And if you're open and vulnerable with people, you can say, I'm sorry when you make mistakes. Tell them, I'm going to make mistakes. We're all becoming more expert at this as we go, and we're building our confidence as we go. And we're going to make better decisions 2 years from now than we're going to make right now. But that doesn't mean we just don't make decisions. We have to. Think of confidence as kind of a strong faith that you have in the rightness of this particular decision or the way that we're doing things currently. It doesn't mean that you're not going to change over time. It does mean, however, that right now this is the best option and we are going to go with it. And leaders are, if nothing else, decision makers for better or for worse. So you have to exhibit some level of confidence that will improve over time. And that leads me to our last quality here, and that's curiosity. Part of how you change for the better is through curiosity. You're curious about your business, your people, your customers, the unique personality of your business as it changes over time. We have to constantly be thinking about getting to know our business every single year. You're going to have some things that are just part of the personality of the business that you can kind of predict are going to happen. But not everything that we do in this business of coffee shops is predictable, if the last couple of years is any indicator. Part of the insecurity that people have when starting a coffee shop is exhibited in a preoccupation with metrics and a preoccupation with forecasts. Like, we're going to be here in 5 years. This is how it's going to look. This is what the numbers say. And it's sort of a warm digital blanket. But 5 years down the line, it actually doesn't look exactly like you thought it was going to look, because they take on a life of their own. There are going to be some aspects of the business that are similar, but just like a child who grows and becomes their own person, they have, your eyes or your nose or something like that. But their likes and dislikes, the jokes that they laugh at, and other things like that, it can be surprising. Like, oh, that's interesting. Or to some people's dismay, it's just like, oh, I didn't think that was going to happen. And they become like, if they're a control freak, they just start really worrying instead of celebrating those differences, which brings us right back to the beginning of our conversation today, as we talked about how being a leader is not so much about you exhibiting the skills of those that you lead, but more it's about creating a platform for other people's skills and strengths where you might be weak to actually shine, so you can celebrate their strengths. So if you're not analytical and you have someone who is, that shouldn't be a worry necessarily. It should be something that you celebrate. Thank goodness that we have this person, and we'll always need to have somebody who's analytical, because as much as I might improve in that area, I'm not going to be as good as somebody who's naturally gifted in that area. And I don't have to be. I don't have to be as a leader. But what I do have to have, in my opinion, are these 6 things. A mindful disposition that leads us to make empathetic decisions and conduct ourselves empathetically. Patience in the process of building. Consistency in the process, as well as a confidence that grows through the experience of it all, and maintaining a curious disposition that allows our coffee shop and the people in it to thrive. So I hope that today's episode was helpful. Certainly there are other qualities of leaders in coffee shops that we could go over, but I felt like these 6 things were important enough and essential enough to go over in today's episode. So if you have any questions, comments, or feedback about today's episode or any other episode of Keys to the Shop, feel free to email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. And if you're interested in Keys to the Shop consulting, then you can also use that same email address, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, one of the joys that I've had over the years is getting to talk to people about things that we've talked about today. For example, in leadership and beyond at Coffee Fest. I've been going since 2004, but Coffee Fest is going to be celebrating 30 years of, 3 shows a year. In the last few years, 4 shows a year. That's 30 years of equipping the specialty coffee retail community with the tools and insights, information, training needed to do well, to have a great coffee retail business. Go check them out over at coffeefest.com to see when the shows are for next year. In 2022, the 30th year of Coffee Fest, we are going to New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Seattle. It is a great place to take your team. There's lectures, workshops, trainings, even lectures on the show floor. And on the show floor, of course, there's awesome vendors and competitions as well, like the Cold Brew competition, Coffee Fast World Latte Art Championship Open, which I'm a judge for as well. So lots to do at Coffee Fest. And so mark your calendars for next year. Go to coffeefest.com to learn more. And also sign up for Coffee Fest 365, Coffee Fest's new online learning platform. I'll be contributing a lot to that in the coming year, and I'll hope to see you either there or in person at these shows in 2022. Again, go find out more information over at coffeefest.com. And with that is the end of our show today. Have an awesome day, and as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.